Well, greetings everybody. Welcome to our King's channel. And a hearty welcome to you, Mr. Elon Musk. I do ask that if those that do contact you concerning this here video, I do offer the one that gets it to you, and hopefully that you act on it, a reward of $10,000. There's a reason why I need to go through people in order to do this, and I'll show you that shortly. First, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I have an offer for you. I was showed something many years ago, but first I'd like to give a little bit of free advice. I think that as far as Twitter goes, you should drop your offer and start your own, which I think will be much more successful than Facebook and Twitter put together. That advice is for free, my friend, but the advice that I'd like to bargain with you over is that you can make your electric vehicles a whole lot cheaper, a whole lot lighter, as I know of a device that I'm willing to share with you that will not only allow your vehicles to run without ever having to take a charge. In fact, at night when one of the vehicle owners are finished with their vehicle, if they live out in the country or the rural area where they can park next to their house to plug into their home, they could actually take their house offline, take it right off the grid, and run it by the power generated from the electric vehicles. I know this sounds like it's something far-fetched and from the future, something maybe from outer space. I've explained this idea to people in the past, actually geniuses, electrical engineers and such, and they said that it would be impossible. But the reason being, I believe that this device was meant for you. I don't know if you're familiar with the prophet Enoch, but Enoch wrote about my life in detail, and what I'm asking in return is that you cause an investigation to take place. And the reason why I'm asking you, sir, is because as I copy and pasted from an email from a second notice that I sent out to corrupt men and women that are employed as public servants, whether elected or not. And I'll run through the list real quick here to show you, but the subject line on that second notice that I had sent out, for some reason I can't find my first notice. I believe that it disappeared somehow. But the subject line was second notice in claiming your personal liabilities by neglect of Title 18 U.S.C., the United States Code, subsection 4, misprision of felony. Please act or take action now. And I sent it out to all these emails, as you can see right up there, to the governor, Texas, Secretary of Texas, all the way down through all these different agencies. Here it was sent to the Rangers, Texas Rangers. A little further down the list, you can see here it was sent to the United States Marshal Office. It's been sent out to the news agencies. There's a couple of them all the way down here, all these different ones. Even Fox News I had sent out this email to. And you can see all the rest of these emails. And you know what was peculiar is that I did receive in return a couple of those instant responses, automatic responses, where they said they would get back with me within 24 hours or 48 hours. And please understand, I am a Army veteran, okay? I gave my years during peacetime. I made an oath of office that I would fight against foreign as well as domestic terrorists, enemies, and I tried to uphold this. But you'll see that in Texas, where at one time I was living, was, and I would probably say still is, run by corrupt men and women conspiring against the people. And the reason why America is in such bad shape as it is today is because the grassroots level has gotten just as ugly and defiled as the upper liaisons. And I'm not complaining or trying to call anybody anything bad or foul or that sort. I am beyond scared. I'm beyond upset. I'm beyond angry. In fact, I turned in my anger for forgiveness. I forgive Satan and her minions, and I do understand that everything I do here is but a battle against the spirits. And I'll show you, you can probably find no other reason why other than men and women acting as puppets to Satan and her minions to bring about these things against me. And the reason being, I'll tell you straight out, sir, I am one of my other 143,999 brothers out there. I do know of possibly 2 of them, as we are hidden, some not even on earth, some are in the farthest parts of heaven. And if you don't understand the scriptures, you'd never understand that. But I do have something to show you why America has lost all respect for me as well as law enforcement. I live like a hermit, and all I am asking in return for giving you that device is that you get the ball rolling and have several court cases investigated wherein I put in challenges to the jurisdiction and the corrupt men acting in their official capacity as elected judges of the district courts, the 104th District Court, the 42nd District Court, and or etc., Taylor County, Coleman County, Callahan County, and because of this, they tried to murder me in 2016. What I'm going to tell you, you may think I'm a little crazy, but I do need to read this for you. This is part of that email that I sent out, and it was sent out December 30th, 2016 is when this was sent out, after they tried to murder me, and I was reporting these felonies. We're in just part of a long email. It took a long time to get out just a fraction of the felonies committed by those in conspiracy. And we're talking, as you've seen, as far as Texas is concerned, from the governor all the way down. I do have a billing that was successfully won by notary protest. I don't know if you know anything about the process, sir, but that's how Willie Nelson lost everything that he had owned. The IRS had sent him out a few notices that Willie owed. Willie took the papers, threw them in the trash. He didn't answer, and therefore he agreed, so they took everything that he owned. I use these same principles because of the horrors that men and women that I know were led by the devil, not only by the devil, but our Heavenly Father as well, because there's nothing Satan can do without being ordered by my high priest, who I call Yahshua, but I don't want to get all in the scriptures with you here. I'd rather show you something that you can invite your friends over for popcorn and really enjoy to see what I've been put through for most of my life. And all I'm needing to make you even more wealthy, okay? I already gave you some great advice to save you billions of dollars from buying something that you could do much better doing on your own, and it would cost you a whole lot less. But anyways, the body of this email that I had sent out to all those emails above says, notice and claim of your personal liabilities by neglect. Please read the attachment for ultimate purpose of this matter at hand. It says you may be negligent and liable for violations of Title 18 U.S.C., subsection 4, misprision of felony, which I had described down in the body of this letter a little further. And it says, as I offered information of numerous commissioned felonies by conspiracy, and you appear to have taken no act or action whatsoever except to ignore. This means that you are also liable as co-conspirator in the known felonies made known to you. As a man or woman, you cannot simply claim that you have no jurisdiction, as every citizen is personally charged to uphold said Title 18, which you are a citizen or citizen. For example, my church, my domicile and vehicle, and or etc. were burned in a hate crime. What was left, including my rights, were stripped from me, utilizing known frauds, forgery, aggravated perjuries, and or etc. into a court record by a conspirator that is in contempt of court order for that very court, and said, and this came from an email that I was sent, and it says, you keep accusing me of burning down your church domicile. I'm not the one who wanted the evidence destroyed, and that is as shown in the original email that I could send you if you would like. I further said, because of this, I have appointed Greg Abbott, who acts as the elected governor of the state of Texas, and I require that my head lawfully, legally gets chopped off. I told all these agencies to come and chop my head off. And why? And I require that my head lawfully, legally gets chopped off, or some other agreeable avenue of sparing me of further felonies to come against me for doing what is right by those who commit wrongs, with rewards for doing so. That I be acquitted and granted remedies for the documented frauds, aggravated perjuries, abuses of power, obstructions of justice, RICO Act violations, hate crimes, and or etc. that are prima facie evidence in many courts, or that an investigation into these matters ensues immediately. Now, this was sent out to all these law enforcement agencies, these governmental agencies, and what did they do? They ignored me. It says not even Loretta E. Lynch has responded, though she emphatically states an apparent false hope for victims such as my own self, and I give here the website that she had put up there telling she wanted to help people like me that was defrauded and such. She didn't even reply. She didn't respond. And therefore, she, as well as Ted Cruz, who is a senator, I believe, for the state of Texas, and I didn't send Ted Cruz an email. What I did was I sent him a fax. And in this fax, I gave him all sorts of evidence. I gave him permission to do the investigation. I even signed it. And I explained to him many felonies that were committed. And what did Mr. Cruz do? Absolutely nothing. He didn't even respond. However, I've got the evidence that he didn't. Therefore, he comes under and should be found guilty of violations to Title 18 U.S.C. subsection 4, misprision of felony. Furthering, I said, if you believe that you have no jurisdiction to act or take action, you are wrong and liable of penalties that include prison for up to 3 years. It is your duty and responsibility as a citizen or citizen to report to one that is empowered to act or take action. Therefore, I highly recommend that you forward this email to the following email addresses I will provide. Ask them that they acknowledge that you did report the information of these felonies, that you won't be liable for violations of said Title 18, and please do require that those in the emails provided right back to you as acknowledgement of your dutiful reporting, and ask them what they intend to do about it. As stated, I am more than willing to have my homeless head chopped off publicly, tickets being sold to watch all the proceeds to be given to those less blessed than we are. Copy and paste these emails into your tube. When you forward this message, don't forget to read the original email below in event you ignored it, and put yourself into my homeless shoes that are not allowed to enjoy silly things like property or rights. And then, of course, I give these email addresses even to the U.S. Marshal, the Texas Rangers and such, wherein I was ignored. And, of course, I did mention, of course, it doesn't look like I'm homeless now, because I'm not homeless now. I'm a recluse. I'm basically in prison after they burned up my vehicle while they were trying to murder me using the tax dollars of the American people, misappropriated, to kidnap me and to throw me into jail for no reason other than for their conspiracies to murder me. And this here was made out. It's a fraud that was used to have me arrested by a county or district attorney that was acting in conspiracy with a man that I billed lawfully, even filed in court that I would have to if the man did not carry out his duties in the office of a district court. And the reason why they kidnapped me and almost murdered me, I'll read to you. And it starts right here. Hopefully you can see that. And it says, the letter dated July 18, 2016 contained a large amount of nonsense regarding contracts, common law, and Hawkins's declaration that I am a man. So because I say that I'm a man, because I stood on common law instead of these codes and statutes that they don't uphold in the courts, I've already been through those avenues, and because of contracts in Texas and that area of the United States of America Corporation claims that contracts are nonsense. And furthering in here, It says, the letter also contains numerous statements about Hawkins' perceived mistreatment in court on July 14, 2016, and claims that Judge Weeks owes Hawkins $1,138,348. What they did not mention is that from the time of the date stamp on that contract, that bill to a man corrupting the office of an elected judge, you can't sue a judge, but you can certainly bill a man. But as you've seen, it was over $1 million that this complaint and affidavit for arrest was made out for. There was no grand jury. There was no warrant served me at the time of my arrest. They even took me to Shackelford County from Callahan County in my underwear and my socks. Now this here is the arrest warrant, but as you can see, this is from a county judge. The alleged charge is for retaliation, third-degree felony, signed by Steve Odom, Justice of the Peace, upon my abduction, kidnapping, and please understand, this in 2016 is further retaliation from those things that we're going to show you here shortly, and hopefully quickly. But as you can see here, this is the Texas, the county of Callahan, to whom it may concern, before me the undersigned magistrate, Callahan County, so on and so forth. But it shows down here that I signed nothing. There is not a single paper that I signed when they abducted me and put me into their jail, wherein after being tortured for a while, they ended up putting me in solitary confinement until 44 days of my being starved. They fed me nothing that I could eat, and I was rescued. But while I was in the jail being tortured and starved, they burned my house down. They burned my church down. Please check Mr. Musk and see. You'll see that there was no investigation into the matter, though the ones that burned it down were seen. They didn't even investigate it. They know who the arsonists were. It didn't even make the newspapers, my friend. And of course, this here was the billing. You can see everything's official. It's been date stamped and everything else. Notice it says negotiable but private. They didn't even try to negotiate. This John Weeks, who was elected as a circuit judge over Callahan, Coleman, and Taylor counties, was dutifully billed and sent by registered mail. And please do notice, that is a post office stamp right there, showing that July 18, 2016, just as they were sending this off, and I had all my bases covered, and I even knew what John was going to do. I knew he was going to try to murder me, but as you see in the email that I sent out as well, I offered these people to chop off my head or some other agreeable avenue to spare me from the felonies being committed against me. Now, some of the things I did bill the man, John Weeks, for while I was in his court, as he was in contempt of his court, or I should say of the court. And under B, it says, you, John, also gave orders to me to shut up 32 times. Orders for me to shut up are valued at $25 per order, and your total for orders you made for me to shut up brings your total for the 32 orders to $800. So I was going through and just charging for the violations for the orders that I was being given, wherein this man refused to do his duties as a judge. I mailed this to him, and I was called into his court, but before I could enter into the room, the bailiff was there to arrest me, and he abused me all the way down to the jail, wherein the sheriff did as well. And of course, once I was released from jail, I come to find out that between two sheriff offices, that of Callahan County and Shackelford County, almost $500 came up missing out of my wallet. These are our public servants. Mind you, from Shackelford County, I had to get in my friend's car in my boxer shorts and socks because they never transferred my clothes from the other jail. They figured I was going to be dead. They had planned on murdering me, just as the Book of Enoch spoke of. So when I got back to Callahan County Jail, I did get my clothes back, and I requested that they give me back my stolen money. I explained to them that they didn't even bother to make out a receipt for that which they had unlawfully seized. They never made out any receipt for what they had seized from me. And when I was telling them, making the claim that they had stole almost $500, and sir, $500 to me is like 50 billion to you. It was almost everything I had. Wherein they started threatening to tase me and to throw me back into the jail if I didn't shut up and get the hell out of their jail. But what started these things first, I'd like you to do a search on me. But I'll show you that I'm not a crackpot, even though I am certified as paranoid schizophrenic, I believe it was that I am, but I won't take their drugs for it. I've been on Social Security disability since 1994, I believe. Prior to that, I had broke my back because I had to go find employment due to what this newspaper article. Now, please understand, if you try to check out the Abilene Reporter News archives for July 26, 2003, as it shows here, when this made, I believe it was the front page of the Abilene Reporter newspaper, it's not in the archives. They removed it from the archives after I explained to the newspaper their liability as being co-conspirators with 10 city employees who misappropriated public funds, federal funds as well, because they get mixed. They don't stay separate, so they were stealing federal and public funds to file into a district court, the 104th District Court. I believe it was 23075B is the cause number. They filed a known fraud using the taxpayers' money. Each one of the plaintiffs, 10 of them, each wanted in excess of $10,000 each from me. They also wanted exemplary damages, and they wanted to put me in prison for 10 years and thought they were going to do it as well. But my attorney's marvelous. My attorney is my Heavenly Father's son. And if you look up into the cause number 23075B, I believe it is, I could be wrong, but you can have an attorney check this out, sir. You'll be compensated greatly for it. And as you can see, I've been persecuted because of my beliefs for a very long time. And please understand, I'm not part of this group any longer, nor have I been for about 20 years, whatever. But the headline says, sect member threatens to seize city's property. And this was by a Loretta Fulton. And please, you can believe the amount of money that they say they're owing. My name is done properly here. But as far as the rest of the things, they're not facts at all. They were created to set up for a fraud that was filed against me. In fact, the article reads and says, Abilene City Hall is taking seriously a threat from a man to confiscate more than $1 billion in computers and in other city property as repayment for a 1989 house demolition, even if the amount raised eyebrows. Well, yes, I did bill them for over $1 billion at that time. Prior to 2003, I had already done the notary protest, and what I was doing was the city of Abilene was having a auction, and I own Abilene. According to the contractual agreement, successfully conducted a notary protest, wherein here in America, the way it's supposed to work is if one is successful in a notary protest, all they need to do is take that to any court that has jurisdiction of the amount sought, hand it to the judge, and the judge is supposed to sign off on it, as the debtors already agreed to everything through a notary public. A notary public actually has more power than the Supreme Court of Texas or the Supreme Court of the United States of America's corporation. A notary public has more power in that one function of a notary protest than the courts, or all the courts combined. The matter's already decided. It's already done by the time it goes to a court. And so this was the way the city of Abilene, as well as the state of Texas, was trying to make this go away. And it shows that it was more than $1 billion back in 2003. And I believe there's a compilation of that amount in the event they did not pay. And of course, that amount is way higher. And so what I did was I put an order of procurement with the sheriff of Taylor County, letting them know that I needed him to go down and to procure for me a couple computers that I had seen that I could use, as well as a few vehicles that would have been written off the billion-dollar bill. And of course, the sheriff himself put an affidavit known to be filed because he had no due diligence in it. But it was filed with aggravated perjuries, just the same as 10 other affidavits that are filed into that court were riddled with aggravated perjury. Anyway, in the article it says we don't have nearly that many computers, City Attorney Sharon Hicks said. On Wednesday, Hicks emailed city employees advising them of the warning of Mr. Alan Douglas Fountain, which is I, or was, now known as Al-Yahnai Fountain Hawkins. Hicks cautioned employees to alert an official if anyone called or arrived in person requesting city property. So far, Fountain has not attempted to take any property, Hicks said. The city issued a cease and desist order against him. Right now, we're just proceeding with the alert until he takes more steps, Hicks said. Now, this is where we get to where the Abilene Reporter News, if they used due diligence, they would have never put in here what they did. And that's why they removed this article from the archives, is because it says the dispute stems from the 1989 demolition of Fountain's house at 600 Virgil Street, located off TMP Lane, where the House of Yahweh headquarters is located, the religious sect labeled a cult by some. So they was just slapping me because people in Abilene didn't care for us from the House of Yahweh at that time. I didn't know at the time why, but now I do. However, the 600 Virgil Street is what those 10 defendants filed the cause of action under. Now, please understand that what they're going to state in this article in just a little bit was also false, but when I presented into court a receipt for removing the burnt house that a public servant named Richard Sullivan, I believe it was back in 1987, I was off to choir with my new wife, and Richard Sullivan, a public servant, a building inspector for the city of Abilene, Texas, went onto my property, trespassed on my property, took my 6-month-old Rottweiler, put her in the house. I had just bought around 6 or 7 gallons of kerosene for a little kerosene heater that we had. Richard Sullivan went through the house and he poured that kerosene all over the place, and probably on my poor puppy, before he lit a match and walked away. Well, I got called out of choir practice. We ran to the house as they were putting out the fire. I had just spent many months without electricity fixing up that stone house that Richard Sullivan burned down because they were wanting to make a Lytle Shores 2, wherein they already had made a Lytle Shores 1, where they used public and federal funds to build themselves a man-made lake, high-dollar houses around it, fence around it so that those of the public could not use what their tax dollars were used for. But they had planned on making a Lytle Shores 2 since that had made them enough money, I believe. And in order to do that, they had to get rid of the old black folk. So what they did was they put up a dam on Cat Claw Creek in Abilene. And then when the spring rains came, it back flooded this old black area out they used to call the Ludlow District. There was an invalid on his bed almost drowned. So they flooded out this area that never had flooded before. And it never has since. Because they built a dam to flood it out. Then they went in and they declared that area a flood zone, gave those old black folk pennies for their property, bulldozed everything in preparation to build their Lytle Shores 2. Well, I heard they went around afterwards and had offered my neighbors money for their properties, and they ran out of funds by the time they got to mine. I was on agricultural open area land for zoning, and my property was 700 Virgil. Well, I was taken into a Board of Building Standards Committee meeting wherein they wanted me to do action on my burnt house, which they never investigated. And I told them right straight out in that public meeting that Richard Sullivan A man that was hired and employed as a public servant, then and there on my property, trespassed, doused my house, put my 6-month-old dog into it, and burned it down around her ears. Richard Sullivan was right there and he never objected. There was a tape and it may still be there because it was a public meeting and it was recorded. And I was given 30 days to clean up the burnt house. And I said, I won't touch that house because you've got a crime zone ribbon around that house. And if I go in there, next thing you know, you'll be carting me off to jail for tampering with evidence and I won't have no part of it. So then they did some other paperwork and they said, okay, you can take that ribbon down. You have 30 days to clean up the burnt structure and get rid of all debris. Well, I have a receipt that's filed in the court, but the problem is, my friend, American law here, the fraud was filed for 600 Virgil Street, and 600 Virgil Street never existed. It never has, and it may never will. My address was 700 Virgil. On the receipt for having the stone burnt house completely removed and cleaning up the debris from the area days in advance of the 30 days given, there's a receipt, but the judge dismissed it because 700 Virgil has absolutely nothing to do with 600 Virgil, as it shows right here in this newspaper article, which was a lie and a fraud to begin with. And as you can see down here in this verse, it says, Hicks said that in 1989, before she became city attorney, Fountain filed a suit against the city. His house had been condemned in January of that year and demolished. Fountain was ordered by the city to remove the rubble. Hicks said the house had burned, and the city cleared the lot when Fountain failed to. No, my friend, in the court record that I have put on there, a challenge to jurisdiction, there is a receipt in there for, I think it was $275 or $279. I had one of those big old dumpsters come in, and all sorts of friends came down. And I had thousands of birds, okay? I was just about to put up a magazine selling chicks, selling birds like Murray here in America does with their birds. I had just quit my job because my bird business was doing so well. Since they burned my house down, I had also built 2 new houses on the property. And please, again, they say I had failed to remove the burnt house, but there's a receipt in there for 700 Virgil that I did. 600 Virgil Street here never existed, never will, but they filed the known fraud knowing that there's no defense. There was nothing I could do for anything, but I did prove them that they had misappropriated public and federal funds, which the judge helped cover up, and he doesn't have jurisdiction to do those things. And of course, since I had told the Board of Building Standards Committee meeting that Richard Sullivan had burned down my house with my dog in it, he got a little bit of upset, I guess you might say, maybe retaliatorial. Because on February 27, 1959, Richard Sullivan obtained a demolition order for 600 Virgil, came to my property and took my then pregnant for the first time wife, kicked her and myself off under threat of duress that we would be arrested if we did not leave the property. And then Richard Sullivan, with that demolition order for someone else's property, commenced to bulldoze everything that I owned. He bulldozed all my bird pens, all the birds fled. Of course, there were a lot of baby chicks that he took alive inside of brooders. There were eggs hatching. He took all my hatchers and everything, put them in a dump truck, took them to the dump. Of course, all them baby birds and such most likely starved to death. But do people care? No. You know, Al-Yahnai Hawkins animals don't matter when there's conspiracies to be done. And the sad part, sir, is the next couple of weeks, I started collecting those thousands of birds. And some of them, you know, they were exotic. I paid $1,500 a piece for some of the pheasants, Amherst pheasants and such, and wild dogs were coming through and just for sport, killing them off in a bloodlust, and I had piles of them over my head. I was first trying to bury them, but I couldn't dig it in the soil, so I had to burn them. And I tell you, that wasn't a pleasant thing to do. When you raise animals, and a fellow in retaliation because he is a public servant, a corrupt man, bred well at the grassroots levels in the American society, wherein I have no faith, I have no trust whatsoever in the law enforcement agencies or the courts of Texas any longer. And my friend, that's what I'm calling on you to do for the information concerning how you could make your electric vehicles run without needing a charge for as long as you can run them. If you got 3 people driving, you can go from one side of the United States to the other and back and forth and back and forth without needing a recharge. And it's basically perpetual unless a part wears out. And I know that sounds, rather crazy, but so does these things that are taking place. And please understand, here it shows that Hicks said in 1991, U.S. District Sam Cummings issued a summary judgment in the city's favor dismissing the suit. And if you can get your attorneys to look that up, my friend, you'll see that that suit filed in a United States District Court in Taylor County in the post office building. It was filed by an attorney, I believe his name was Gary Brown. I had used this fellow in a different district court of the state of Texas, wherein Gary was on a contingent basis. He had just got out of law school. I was basically his first client, and he took on a contingency basis because it seemed like the suit that I was filing was open and shut. However, Gary Brown lost it for us because he named the wrong defendant. The judge had kicked it out because I was the plaintiff, and we named the defendant something like the Abilene Building Inspection Office or Department, but they kicked it out because it was either office or department, and Gary Brown used the wrong name. So they kicked this matter out. Here we've got a public servant coming down in retaliation, bulldozing everything I owned when I did everything the city commanded me to do, and the proof is in the record, but dismissed because I had a receipt for 700 Virgil, my property, but they filed the fraud under 600 Virgil that everything I bring in to show that I was innocent was dismissed because it had nothing to do with the cause of action, 600 Virgil. But here in this district court in 1991, the U.S. District Sam Judge Cummings issued a summary judgment in the city's favor dismissing the suit. See, the city and Gary Brown that I fired he was wanting me to do an appeal, and it's like, you need $10,000? My wife, my pregnant wife, and myself are living in an abandoned school bus because they came and demolished everything we had. And do you know what, Elon? In Abilene, Texas, in the city codes, if they condemn a property and then they demolish it while somebody is living there, well, they have to take the people that are living there and set them up for up to 5 years in housing. But I fell between the cracks, because why? There wasn't any condemned property when they came to bulldoze. So I didn't get no free housing. My wife and I ended up on a school bus. We ended up having 7 children later, but please understand, it was February 27th. That's cold, my friend. And they took everything we owned to the dump. They kicked us out. Yeah, we had a jacket on each, and we had our clothes on, but we didn't have an extra pair of underwear or nothing. I was going through dumpsters trying to find blankets and such for us to use. The House Yahweh didn't help us at all. There was a wonderful woman named Rose Rodabaugh, though, that gave my wife 3 bags of clothes, But again, my friend, I'm not complaining about these things because it's all spirits behind it, and I understand that. Now, the thing is, with this here district court there that it's speaking of, Gary Brown and the city of Abilene got together and they conspired and they actually filed that court case. The U.S. District Court, we're talking federal court, where Gary Brown forged my signatures. He forged my wife's signatures. And when it was presented to me in court, and I'm looking at it, and I got excited, and it's like, hey, I got up. I didn't know how to act in court, see, and I found out why I should have known better, but I ran up to the judge's bench, and I said, look at that, judge. And as I was pointing, he's scurrying, trying to get this here letter shoved up under the file, and the file for the court at that time was over a foot thick. But I saw there was already a predetermined judgment made out, and yet I still told the judge, I said, that is not my signature. I said, and take a look at the signature for my wife. My wife's name is Judith, and whoever forged her signature to file this fraud into the federal court signed her name as Ann. My wife's name is not Ann. And my wife was so upset with me because she couldn't believe that the courts would allow anything to be filed in there that was such a fraud, and I must be married to another woman, you know? So these things didn't help my life at all. But these corrupt conspirators that were against me and still are, they tried to murder me. I had to flee Texas to where I am in New York now. But how many people do you know have cases made up? In fact, what I believe they had filed it under was slander of title, and I never claimed to have title to the land. I was buying it. I didn't have title to it. And yet that's what they filed, this fraud, this known fraud, into a federal district court. I never appeared before the court, and yet I lost, allegedly. I didn't know anything about the case till I was sitting there with 10 plaintiffs against me. And you should have been there, Elon. I was sitting there explaining things to the judge, how he was a co-conspirator as well, aiding and abetting known felons and such. And the judge got up off his bench and the whole place was packed for some reason. All these people with plastic hair and these expensive suits, it was pretty wild. And the judge got up and he ran from the bench to his chambers and he slammed the door and locked it behind him. How often do you hear people doing those things? And I was even being courteous, my friend. So please, do an investigation on me. Take a look at my background. I'll show you how to run your vehicles. But there are some rights I want to it. You know, I want to be able to buy as many as I need at a discount. And I'll tell you, sir, as soon as I get Texas, we're going to succeed from the nation. And I know that sounds kind of crazy too. But it's going to be a place where those that desire to live by our Heavenly Father's every living word can move there and live in peace while the rest of the world does what they want to do. And I'm sure, my friend, if you read in the scriptures, you'd understand that what I'm speaking of is considered the second Exodus. But of course, we need a little time for me to set these things up first. And right now, I can't go back to Texas because if I do, they will kidnap me again and finish what they neglected to do the first time around. But what's even worse than that, I don't believe they could kill me. They've tried. It doesn't work. I've even offered them my head. I offered the judge of the 104th District Court, who knew this was a fraud and refused to make the plaintiffs prove their cause. It was over a year afterwards that I finally was taken by that notary public that did the protest on the bill. He took me out to Austin, Texas, to Greg Abbott's office at the time. He was the Attorney General at the time. There was a fellow named Wood something or other that I pulled out several boxes. We're talking boxes. It's a lot in that file, way more than what I could afford to have copied or anything. And they burned it all up on me when they burned me out to destroy the evidence. And I believe the device that I'm speaking to you about can be used to power people's houses. It'll get rid of all the carbon out there that's produced from using coal. I believe there's a movie out there called Atlas something or other that shows electrical devices. And of course, I had a friend of mine that ended up getting murdered here at the time that I was fleeing Texas, because we had been working on an electrical device that was operated on gravity. But I believe there was somebody that desired to design a little more than my friend was allowed to. They never did an autopsy on him. He was found in a hot trailer with his shirt on, which is a definite indication that there was foul play. Floyd always had the air conditioner on and it wasn't on. And whenever it was warm, he was without a shirt. They refused to do an autopsy on him or anything. So as you can see, the justice in Texas is lacking. And my friend, if you'd like to have some fun, have your attorneys check out cause number 23075B of the 104th District Court, Taylor County, Texas, as well as several other court cases that I've put in challenges of jurisdiction to as well, just like the one in 2016. And this was the cover sheet to the challenge of jurisdiction. And please notice down here the jurisdiction that a justice of the peace in Callahan County has. The justice of the peace, description of office, hears traffic and other Class C misdemeanor cases punishable by fine only. Hears civil cases up to $10,000 in controversy. And that's a Steve Odom, this justice of the peace, who knows he had no jurisdiction to hear a matter, as it shows in the criminal complaint here, for a matter that's over $1,138,348, being a negotiable but private contract to a man, a corrupt man, John Weeks, who was elected as a circuit district judge. He was over the 42nd District Court in Coleman, Callahan, and Taylor County. He should know the district court could handle $1 million controversy, wherein there was no negotiation other than my sending this in his attempt to murder me because he thought it in his heart. This Shane Deal here, being a district attorney and a county attorney, gave this to Steve Odom of the Justice of the Peace Court, even showing the $1 million that was in controversy. And of course, to top it all off, there was a $30,000 bond put on me that the judge even issued as well. As you can see here on the arrest warrant, $30,000, but on the website for the Justice of the Peace Court, Callahan County, Texas, shows on that site that the judge only had in controversy, he could hear a matter in controversy up to $10,000, meaning that judge could only issue a bond against somebody up to $10,000. And yet, it was issued for the amount that the district attorney, acting conspiracy with John Weeks, an elected judge, to put me in jail and make sure I didn't get out because I wasn't even making $1,000 a month on Social Security disability. And they knew that as well. So they tried to murder me. So my friend, what I'm asking is that we make you very wealthy, make your name known even more, make people looking forward to buying your electric cars that they never have to recharge, and they can actually, from the money they save, maybe buy themselves a little cabin out in the woods and hook their car right up to it and have all the electricity they need provided for them. And yet in the morning, just go out, hit the key, and drive on off after they unplug. And again, please keep track of those that send you this video. And whether you're brave enough to look and act into these matters so that you may be able to make your vehicles do such will be totally up to you. However, I do want to make sure that if there are those that actually get this video to you so that you can make this option or this choice, and you don't act on it, then if somebody else does, and I know they're going to, because Enoch said that there's going to be an investigation into this matter. And these sorts of things, how in the world, Mr. Elon Musk, could such things actually take place in America? The American dream. I'm a vet. And now do you see why I was certified as paranoid schizophrenia? Because they ignore everything they done and make me feel as though it never took place either. And everyone I speak to about it, they refuse to believe because it has nothing to do with the American dream. And there's no way that you could have those from a governor all the way down through doing such conspiracies toward anyone, let alone an ambassador of heaven, ambassador of our marvelous king, my father's son, who has 143,999 brothers that are out there, and we're going to be gathered someplace. I'm just thinking Texas might be where we're going to be gathered. And if not, we certainly need to practice, because this $1 billion plus everything else that they do owe, once I'm made whole, is going to sure help feed a number that no man can count. So with that, my friend, please pray about these things. Understand, I offered them my head. Not only here, but in the 104th District Court, I filed an affidavit, says, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. And I offered to any man, woman, or child that had information that I had anything to do with 600 Virgil Street in Abilene, Texas, that the judge would therefore have permission to take the bailiff's gun and me down to the parking lot and blow my brains out across the parking lot. Now that's in an affidavit. Please don't delete this video, YouTube, because I said such things. These are prima facie evidence in a district court, filed. Nobody took me up on that, my friend, nor did I get my trial by jury, though paid for. But as I already explained, that some of the felonies, just the tip of the iceberg of what these conspirators are doing. And I'll tell you, my friend, there's many people in the jails in Taylor, Coleman, Callahan, and Shackelford County. There are plenty of men that are stuck inside those jails, filling up the cells, and they don't even know why they've been arrested either. I was having heart problems, and it took them like 8 or 9 days, whatever, before they sent somebody to have my heart checked out. And when EMS got there and they put me on an EKG or whatever that is, EEG, EKG, they looked at the jailer and said, you know, this man here needs to get to the emergency room. And the jailer refused to allow me to go. And that's all documented. It's all in papers. In fact, I got some of those papers right here to prove it. And I was carrying these papers when I went and seen my burnt home and vehicle. And again, I've never had a vehicle since because I can't afford one on Social Security disability. And they knew it. And my friend, because of all these false testimonies that are taking place, they need to have the same thing come back on their head. And once Texas is rescinded from the United States of America's corporation, the people that come will govern ourselves. We will police ourselves. And we will be judged, if necessary, by the ecclesiastical laws. And if you read the scriptures, sir, you'll find out that it speaks of these very things going to take place. Comment on one of my videos if you want to get a hold of me, or you probably can figure out how to get a hold of me. I'm not going to put my email out here for everybody to see. As stated, I'm quite the recluse now. I've got no use for human beings or society for the most part. I've got plenty of room for brothers and sisters, but I'm getting old and I need to be made whole. And with that, I do love y'all. Bye.